What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Planet Soccer Podcast. Reed Simpson here, along with Dylan Wilcox, my co-host. Might have been the first time I did that whole little intro thing without stumbling over my words or
Progress.
Having to take like a beer belch at the beginning. But we're back talking Premier League. I do feel like it's been a hot second since we sat down. I think we skipped a week. I feel like we struggle with this every single week, whether it's match week 18 or 19 or whatever the case may be. It's essentially
the halfway point,
the midway point in the Premier League season. The portrait is being painted, and it's coming to clarity what this year is going to look like in many parts of the table. At least if you section off the table like you normally can, you've got top of the table, which are the European spots, mid-table, and then relegation zone. Those are very much taking shape for the most part. So we're able to really dive in and talk about what we see or what we saw in the first half and what we think it means and what we think we'll see moving forward in the second half. So, Dylan, you probably you and I have completely different perspectives from our teams in this one, even though, they're 4 and 5 in the table. Our attitudes are drastically different, I feel like, to this point, especially considering where you were at during this window last year. But Newcastle side, overall, let's start by how do you compare this year and last year, just the Premier League in general? You had that 2-horse race at the top for most of last year. There's new blood this year.
Yeah,
that's my take on it. I'll let you go ahead.
It almost feels like, I mean, it's far from a foregone conclusion who's going to win the league. I'll just get that out there right now. Yeah. But it feels like if you had to rank it, scale of 1 to 10, we're closer to a 10 on our confidence level of the first place team winning the league than we were last year. At least I am. At this point, the team in first, I am more confident will win the league than I would have been at this point last year. So from that aspect, it's a little bit boring, if you will. But because it's that new blood, because it's Arsenal, it's not City, it's not Liverpool, and because Newcastle's fighting, not just me saying this as a Newcastle fan, but because we have new blood fighting for European spots. And I mean, we're looking at Fulham, Brighton, and Brentford all legitimately competing for European spots as well. And Newcastle on top of that. Chelsea's down at 10. Liverpool's at 9. It is a wild, wacky year. So at the very, very top, it might be a little bit more predictable of a second half, but everything else is so wild and wacky. It's a lot more fun for me. I think it's a really good year for us to be starting the podcast. I think it's a really good year for people coming off the World Cup to jump into a second half of a Premier League season and not be like, well, I know City's going to win it, because that's how it's felt year after year lately. So I think from a lot of respects, it's a lot more exciting. At the bottom of the table, it looks super exciting for me. Everton looks like they're going down.
We'll get to the bottom of the table. Which is clustered.
Is a huge story outside of my disdain for them. Everton being relegated would be a massive story. West Ham right now, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're still in a relegation spot because they're not winning anything. And those are two massive, massive English clubs. So just the parity from top to bottom is a lot more exciting this year, even though, in my opinion, the top is a little bit more solidified than we saw last year.
Yeah, I think this year it's not just a 2-horse race. I'm looking at the standings over here. That's where my eyes are. And, you've got Man United, who I think is right now is just as much.
If I was Arsenal, I'd be more scared of United, just based off of eye test and what we've seen thus far. Since Ten Hag has come in, they have looked a much better side than City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and then you got you guys sitting on 1 loss, which is just, that's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, 8 draws, so I think that's by far the most in the league. Almost double. Well, Brentford also has 8, but the next closest is 5. So you guys are not conceding goals and not losing games, and that's how you guys are up there sitting in 4th place, sitting in a Champions League spot. I'm not going to tear you down and say I don't think you can keep it up. I mean, defense, as they say in American sports, it travels and it's tried and true. It is what it is. So That's what Tottenham is not doing right now, and what they really haven't done all season is play defense. They have allowed 31 goals. The top five, 14, 20, 22, 11, 31 for Tottenham. And that's an Antonio Conte side that's always been known for stout defenses. So, like you said, it's not a foregone conclusion at the top. Liverpool might have even been in first at this time last year, for all we know, and obviously they didn't win it. So that nothing is concluded. Nothing has been sharpied in for sure. But let's go ahead and get into it. And I want to start in the relegation zone because I started following the Premier League really closely last year, and relegation came down to the final day. Right now, we've got 3 teams sitting in those bottom 3 spots. None of them are newly promoted teams, which I wonder when the last time that happened was. I should have looked it up. But
I was going to say, that is a fantastic question.
And we're not even talking like 3 non-newly promoted teams. We're talking, like you said, Everton, West Ham, and Southampton, who Southampton's not a massive club by any means, but they're the name. I mean, people know Southampton. And then Bournemouth sitting just outside the relegation zone, Wolves, Leicester, and Leeds. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams are all within 2 points of each other. They go from 15 to 17 points. So it is tight at the bottom, and I don't know what's going to separate them.
Yeah, I mean, like we both said now, it makes it fun not only because it's tight, but it makes it fun because of the names. And again, not just because I dislike Everton, not just for you because I said West Ham could be scary in a couple years, and now they can't score a flipping goal to save their lives. But it is fun seeing. I'm sure people were having fun last year with the possibility of Newcastle getting relegated. Granted, been relegated somewhat recently in the grand scheme of things, more recent than any of those 3 clubs, I believe. But it's still
Everton hasn't been relegated in like 80 years.
Still a big name club, so people it is kind of fun to see, and no ill will against Southampton. I kind of fancy James Ward-Prowse. I think if they are to stay up, he's going to be the reason, if not a big reason why. But the other 2, I'm loving to see fail. I think it's kind of fun for the sport to get that new blood in. Now, I say new blood. If you look at the top of the championship, likely the 3 promoted teams are going to be teams we've all seen very recently. So it's not the newest of blood that would come in, but just seeing that changing of the guard and the fluidity. I think a lot of international non-English managers have talked about how much money is in English football right now, and I think that's a lot of why we're seeing this because, when you look at a team like Everton,
really British football, it's it's aisle wide. It's not just in England.
You look at the wage bill or the transfer fees that Everton's put forward. That probably I don't know for a fact, but I would feel very confident saying that would be over the last 3 to 5 years would be top 5 in any other league, and they're staring relegation.
Incomings.
Yes. Yeah. It'd be top 5 in any other league in the world, and they're staring relegation in the face. There is so much money to be spent
for the second year.
Yes, on English football right now that it does create that parity. I think we are likely past a time where we see teams win 4 out of 5 titles for that same reason. Now, I don't think we're quite to the point where we're going to see another Leicester anytime soon, but I do think we're shying away from seeing a club win 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 championships in a row because of that parity. You see it at the top, you see it at the bottom, you see it in the middle right now, and I think that's going to continue and be a trend moving forward long term in the league.
Yeah, just a little side note for all of you listeners that aren't familiar with Dylan's Leicester City reference. Probably the greatest, I don't know if you call it upset, greatest surprise in sports history.
Yes.
All of sports,
yes.
Ever. Every single sport that's played on the face of the planet. Leicester City winning the 2016. Was it 2015, 2016, or 2016, 2017?
It was a 16. Leicester, it was a 2016.
It was. 2016 was involved. And what's funny is, being a Tottenham fan, Tottenham had one of the most prolific offensive output seasons. They were one of the most dominant sides in Premier League history that year, but they ran into like this God-sent Leicester team that was just destined to win. So that's always going to be like a joke within the Tottenham fan base. You put together your best Premier League season of all time, and you run into that Leicester team. So y'all should go check out Leicester City's Premier League win. Really cool story. They will eventually, if they haven't already, done a big documentary on it. Lots of big names to come from that team. Anyways, Dylan, right now, you have to say on the spot who ends up in those bottom three. Who are they?
I think we did this not too long ago. Everton.
We did.
Everton is for sure going down. Well, all right. I'll do it in order of confidence that they're going down. Bournemouth, 100% going down. I would bet a paycheck on them going down. They're not in a relegation spot right now. They're 1 point clear. I don't care. They are going down. They're the worst team.
-23 goal differential.
They're by far the worst team I have seen in the Premier League this year. Number 2 would probably be Everton. I just don't think the goal scoring is there. I mean, their offense is Wolves level bad, but they also don't have like that stout of a defense. And then number 3, I would probably say Southampton. I was pretty high on them surviving last time we talked about this. I do think Wolves has started to answer a couple of the questions we had surrounding Wolves. I do think they will be able to score enough to stay up. I think they have the best keeper in that relegation zone. I think Jose Sa is a
That's a good point.
Phenomenal keeper. So I'm kind of flip-flopping
Well, Everton has Pickford, so
I'm kind of flip-flopping why I'm picking Southampton to go down over Wolves. I'm favoring goalkeeping here because I don't know if either team are really going to be able to score, but they have the better goalkeeper in my opinion. I think Southampton takes it down to the wire with Wolves. I do think West Ham's got to get clear, right? They have to. Like there's too much talent on that team to not. Like I get they can't score goals. They just spent $15 million on Danny Ings, which right or wrong, they're like they are trying to throw money at it. They have the money to throw at it. I think they will find a way to score enough goals. Yeah.
Does Leicester have them? Do they?
No, not Leicester. Not Leicester. West Ham. Leicester's fine. Leicester's fine. I believe in Leicester. I know they've won like 1 out of 4 and like they're fine. There's again enough talent on that team. I think Leicester and West Ham both to stay clear. So for me, it's Bournemouth, Everton, and Southampton, with Wolves being pretty close there at the end. We could see a similar ending to last year where Wolves and one of those 3 are kind of battling it out to stay alive on that last day.
If you're Vegas, what odds do you put on the relegation battle coming down to the last day? I mean, you got to be 100% in my mind. I know that's not a Vegas odds line.
I mean, not quite. Well, I don't know. Pretty close though. Like I think going into the last day, there will be 1 or 2 teams that are already relegated, but I do think there's a very, very high chance that there's at least one safe spot up for grabs coming into that last day. But if you look at the table, I mean, between 13th and relegation zone, 13th and last, because all 3 relegation zone teams are sitting on 15 points. There's only 5 points separating. So really, everybody from Forest, Leeds, Leicester down, you could argue could be relegated. I think both Leeds and Leicester, much like West Ham, there's just too much raw talent there, too much money that can be spent if needed to stay up. And I think they end up being safe. But I mean, Forest has been a pretty pleasant surprise as of late. They've won 3 of their last 5, only lost 1 of their last 5. They've won 2 straight now. Like, they're probably the one I would be least worried about from that hodgepodge of teams within 5 points. I do think they're probably quite safe. But yeah, I'd say it likely comes down to the last day, at least at one of those spots.
So you've got Bournemouth, who is one of the newly promoted teams. You're saying Forest will likely end up probably around where they're at, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then you got Fulham, the other promoted team, who's sitting in a Europa League spot. I think, or is it 2 Europa League?
It depends on who wins the cup.
Could possibly be sitting in a Europa League spot. So that's really kind of the order that we expected coming in. Maybe not Fulham that high, but it was Bournemouth, Forest, and then Fulham coming in.
And, I mean, there were a lot of people that had Fulham and Forest kind of close together because of the money Forest spent. I think there were obviously questions about how it would gel, but I think everybody kind of knew coming in Bournemouth was the most likely to get relegated. I agree. I don't think anybody saw Fulham, sitting. What are they sitting in 7th right now? Sixth. Yeah, nope. Whoever's telling you they saw that coming is either lying or has a DeLorean with a flux capacitor and can time travel, because nobody saw that coming. So I good on them though. They're a ton of fun to watch. I use this phrase too much probably, but they're kind of appointment TV for me right now. I seek out Fulham matches because they've been so much fun.
Appointment TV is your go-to catchphrase. Gosh, I had something in my head. Here's what that is. If we were paid to do this podcast, we would have done more research and figured out, okay, what do the schedules look like for these teams? Because ultimately, that's what matters.
But didn't I? Oh, no, I only did it. Dang it. I only did it on the top of the table. I didn't spend that much time.
Yeah, because there's really like 7 teams, 8, including Forest, that could like really be in relegation at the end of the year. My 3 are going to be Southampton, Everton, and Bournemouth. Are those the same 3? I think those were the same 3, right?
Yes.
I've actually got Leeds in 17th, and I think they're going to be hanging on by the skin of their teeth.
Don't do that to me.
Leeds just has not been playing very
They have well not. They're not just not getting results. They've looked bad. Like when I've tuned, because Leeds, I've stuck to them being relatively appointment TV for me since the beginning of the year when they were a ton of fun. Man, do I want to go back to September Leeds. But they've just looked bad. They went out and signed a $40 million goal scorer. So that's why I'm not putting them quite that far down. Like they've shown a propensity to spend money and try and right the ship. I still trust in Jesse Marsch, probably American biases. I just like the guy a whole lot. Sounds cliche. He's a little Ted Lasso-y, and I'm here for it. So it's partially I just want him to do well, but I also, when you do listen to him talk, he does sound like he's really grasping the English game, not just football in general. Obviously, you have to know the game to get an EPL job, but he's really kind of coming to grips with the English style and the English Premier League style of play. So I still believe in him, and I think they've spent enough and have enough pieces in place that they'll survive. But I don't blame you for putting them that low. They've looked bad since the World Cup.
Yeah.
Well, even going into the World Cup a little bit.
Man, we are so good about talking about relegation teams. We are so good at that.
I like it. It's fun.
Yeah, it is. It's always a mosh posh down there. It makes it fun. And those teams are just fun in general. I like talking about Leeds and talking about West Ham and Everton being at the bottom. It's just
so much fun.
I could just talk about it forever.
Same.
Let's go
Damn
to that.
Bubbles.
Yeah. The weird mid-table. The ever elusive, no idea what's going on mid-table. I would consider mid-table to be, I would include Forest in the mid-table, but we've already talked about them, so I'm going to include 12th through 7th. So Brighton through Palace. Brighton in 7th, Brentford in 8th, Liverpool in 9th, Chelsea 10th, Villa 11th, Palace 12th. Let's start at the top. Go ahead.
I almost feel like that is doing a disservice to some of these teams. Like Fulham.
I agree. Hold on. I agree.
There's like 2 mid-table teams right now.
I'm going to take Brighton. I'm going to take Brighton out of mid-table.
I mean, I would take Brentford too. And as much as I would love to like clown on Liverpool and clown on Chelsea and call them mid-table teams, they're not. Like when I look at the table now,
I'm, like literally mid-table.
Physically, as the table stands, I get it. But like
I'm staring at the table.
Yes,
I'm looking
mathematically,
at the
Chelsea is the middest of the mid-table teams.
Yeah.
So like I get
after spending £400 million on players.
Like I understand it, but and when you look at the table, when you look at the points too, outside of Newcastle and Tottenham, that's when you kind of start to see a bigger jump. But still, separating 6.
You're analyzing the shit out of this mid-table.
I'm saying there isn't a mid-table for me outside of Palace and Forest. Like those are my mid-table teams. Like Villa could very well finish in a Conference League by the end of the season. Chelsea could finish in a Europa. Like there's so much there that can fight their way to the top because it's been so close, and that's that parity I mean, you could argue
Oh yeah,
Brighton is
just because I say
ahead.
they're mid-table. Go ahead.
You could argue like Brighton's kind of got a foot up on Tottenham right now. Like they have two.
Everybody has a foot up on Tottenham.
I'm saying table wise.
Tottenham's playing soccer with 1 foot right now.
I'm just saying table wise. They got 2 games in hand. Like because of how wonky the schedule is this year. Like I have a hard time like labeling a Liverpool as much as I would like to, labeling them as a mid-table team at this point. I'm not doing it to Brentford because they can't lose a game if they tried. And Fulham can't stop winning if they tried at this rate. So, like, I think the mid-table has we kind of talked about how the top and the bottom are separating themselves. I feel like they kind of are if you're looking at top 4, bottom 4. But everything in the middle, there's so much fluidity there still. Like, I firmly believe Villa, Chelsea, Liverpool, any one of those 3 could finish in some sort of European competition this year because of the talent they have on their roster, because of the money they're willing to spend. Whether Klopp admits it or not, they're all willing to spend money. So we can talk about them as mid-table if you insist, because it is fun to call Chelsea a mid-table team. But I think it isn't doing the league justice by calling them mid-table, because I really think it is a little bit more jumbled up than we're typically used to seeing.
You guys can tell me and Dylan really organize what we're going to talk about and how we're going to talk about it before episodes. We're definitely on the same page. You had a, well, actually moment just then. So when I say mid-table, I'm looking at the first team that's out of a European competition as of the day of recording, and then the first team we don't talk about with relegation. So yes, I do not think this mid-table will be anywhere near the same at the end of the season, but that's why this is a mid-season podcast. And in the mid-season podcast,
Chelsea is mid-table,
and Chelsea being mid-table teams. And you know what, Brighton, you're not mid-table. We'll talk about you in the third tier. Brentford just missed the cut just because they're out of a European slot if the season ended today. So we've hinted at it. Liverpool, Chelsea, obviously the most talented clubs out of this mid-table. If you want to come up with a better name for what we're talking about right now, just
cluster F.
Yeah. So Liverpool, man, they were getting hot and then they lost 2. It's who knows where they're going to end up at the end of the year. I think they end up in like 6th, probably 7th, maybe.
Give me Conference League. I want them in the Conference League so bad.
I think the 4 teams that are in Champions League right now are going to be the 4 teams that are in it at the end.
I don't know if I don't know. Maybe I'm being pessimistic as a Newcastle fan.
Tottenham isn't jumping up. Fulham isn't finishing Champions League.
Well, right. Fulham's not. Brighton's not. Brentford's not. Like it's Newcastle or it's Tottenham. I understand you don't think Tottenham's going to jump Newcastle,
not Tottenham.
But I also could very well see like we're still overperforming. Like you look at our roster. We're way overperforming. And at some point, the shoe's got to drop. But we're talking mid-table, so I apologize.
We said that about Arsenal, too.
You said that about Arsenal. I was all in on Arsenal from the beginning this year.
Okay, all right, yeah. We'll get to these teams next. Sorry, Villa. We'll talk about you and Palace now. Palace, we said the same shit about Palace all year, man. Yes, it is the Six Flags roller coaster baby of the Premier League. It is when they're firing, they're going to beat any team in the league. They're going to do it at home in front of that just absolutely wacky crowd that they have. Villa, they've played really well since Unai Emery came in. The official football terrorist of the Premier League. And I have to say, when I say that, I mean the style of play, not literal terrorist. That's a Nick Watanabe coined phrase is what I'm taking that from at Professor Nick on Twitter. Not really. I don't know what his handle is. But Villa's been playing well. I mean, they really have. I don't think I've watched a Villa game this year, honestly.
So I understand kind of where you're coming from a little bit on this, but who have they beat?
Tottenham.
Well, right, but you said Tottenham sucks, so that's not a good win.
They do.
And they beat Leeds, who we just talked about how bad. So like I'm not trying to discount what Villa's done. They have, I believe they have 3 wins across competition since the break out of 5 with a draw in there against Wolves. So like not at all trying to discount their performance under Emery. They have looked much better.
When did they hire Emery? Do you know?
No,
was it? It was before the World
Cup.
I
was gonna say I want to say like November.
So their big stretch, like their hell yeah stretch, was draw Brighton, win Chelsea, then beat Tottenham after the break, and that was kind of where they like jumped back into that like clear mid-table out of relegation. Oh no, I'm sorry. Even go back further. They beat Brighton. One of these might have been Cup, though. They beat Brighton and drew Brighton. Regardless, the results, of Brighton sitting in, what are they, 7th? That's a team, like, if you want to jump back into the mid-table.
Yeah.
We talk about relegation teams battling each other. That's similar with what Villa did. And they stole some points that they probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, I believe the Brighton
Chelsea game.
I believe the Brighton win may have been on the road. I could be wrong about that. It may have been home, but I believe that one was on the road, and going to the south there is not always an easy road. 3 points to nab, especially how good Brighton has looked this year. So yeah, again, not at all trying to discount.
Both managers, man.
Right.
Both managers. Brighton's a machine.
It's awesome. I love it.
Brighton's like the TCU football of the Premier League. Just shouldn't be up there. Here we are, baby.
And if it really came down to it, they'd get their teeth kicked in. But yeah, Villa is going to be fine.
That happens.
I don't see Villa like slipping down into relegation zone. Same with Palace. It's been a roller coaster. It's been fun at times. It's been ugly at times.
Palace is going to finish 13th every single year in the Premier League.
And I think that's right where they're going to be at the end of this year, is that 11 to 13 range. And I don't honestly have a ton to say about them other than if you are a team fighting for a European spot or a championship, it's not somewhere I really would want to go and have to nab 3 points. I mean, we just saw United put on a phenomenal performance for 88 minutes and then get burned on a beautiful free kick to essentially drop 2 points in a match on the field they probably should have gotten all 3 from. So Selhurst, as roller coaster as we have and will continue to see Palace, is not a place you want to have to go.
It sounds like they're going to hang on to their guys through the window.
Yeah,
they're going to be weakening.
Yeah, they're going to be a tough road win. They're a team that don't struggle to play well on the road themselves, but it's a stadium. If you're looking at your calendar, I hope for your sake you've already gone there, because if you haven't, best of luck to you.
Stadium, baby.
Selhurst.
Yeah.
I was talking.
You were talking. Yeah. Selhurst. Yeah, my bad. Okay. Let's talk mid-table Chelsea Liverpool. Chelsea, I mean, they have a whole Champions League starting 11 hurt, honestly.
Yeah.
Let's be real, call it what it is. That's not to say that the players they have playing right now aren't good, though, because they're expensive players and they're very good. And they should not be in 10th place. I don't care who's hurt. I don't care what kind of shit's going on behind the doors of Chelsea.
They're honestly, as much as I love to shit on Liverpool and Klopp complaining about injuries and not having money, they're very similar when you look at their injury report as far as talent they're missing, but Liverpool just doesn't have the reinforcements that Chelsea has. And I love crapping on Klopp for how much they spend, but they just flat out don't have the depth that a City or a Chelsea have. So I agree. I think it is more surprising, unacceptable, disappointing, if you're a Chelsea fan, to see Chelsea where they're at right now than Liverpool. Liverpool, you can kind of explain it. It's still a disappointment. There's still enough talent on Liverpool to not be 9th. But I understand if they were sitting in 6th. And when you look at the table, so much is congested. We're talking about a couple of points, the difference between 9th and 6th right now. Like I think Liverpool's literally 3 points off of 6th. So that's one win where they lost.
With two games in hand.
Right.
Yeah.
So Liverpool, you can explain it a little bit. Chelsea, it's flat out unacceptable. They aren't going to finish in a Europa League spot. Like, I don't care how much money they spend. Like, they're not qualifying for Champions League. They're not. I don't even think they qualify for Europa League. So I'm really hoping we see one of those two in the Conference League, because that would just be
Conference
awesome.
League is not fun. The
It
Conference
would
League
be
is
awesome.
not fun. Going to Vitesse on a November afternoon is not fun.
November Thursday, and then you got to play Arsenal on Saturday or Sunday. Like, that's
Antonio
just...
Conte's first game in charge of Tottenham was Thanksgiving Day against Vitesse in the Europa Conference League, and we lost. It just set the stage for that beautiful American holiday that we all love.
Well, you can honestly, like, if you're a really big club, you can almost stunt some growth by having to play Conference League. Like if I'm Newcastle, and like if you tell me we're going to collapse and not qualify for Europa, like I have a choice of not qualify for any European competition or qualify for Champions League. I'd rather just not qualify for anything. Just go full melt, full collapse. Don't qualify, because I don't want to have to waste those resources on going to some random Eastern European country on a Thursday when I have to face league leaders on Sunday. Like,
that's kind of Premier. I think that's Premier League exclusive too, because it was big for Roma to win the Conference League. I think so. That's just if you have to go through the Premier League gauntlet. It kind of, I don't know what Roma's sitting in right now. I'm actually, you keep talking about go on to Brentford. And, I'm gonna look at
Man, Ivan Toney's a machine at Brentford. Brentford's another really fun team to watch. I'm not going to sit here and claim appointment TV, because I can't call them all appointment
Roma
TV.
Sucks.
Yeah, they've had a bad year. I was going to let you look it up, though, because I wasn't like 100% sure. But Brentford's been a lot of fun, but I just don't know if they quite have the resources throughout the midfield to depth-wise to compete week in, week out for the next 4 months to really fight for a Europa League spot. I would favor Fulham over Brentford, or over, maybe not over Brighton. Brighton just seems to, like you said, produce. It's like they get those respawn guys on FIFA when your career mode's gone so long. It's like they just find the respawn guys somehow. It's like they get the respawn Messi just out of nowhere. It's like, oh, cool. It's
they respawn Basuma with McAllister. They respawn, whoever with Demarai Gray. I know Gray was there before, but I get what I know.
It's just endless for them. So
coaches too,
right?
Not only players.
So I think of the three there that are kind of fighting for those European qualification spots, I would put Brentford as my least favorite. As great as Ivan Toney has been, as much as I like watching him play, as happy as I am for him being a former Newcastle guy that just didn't work out, all parties kind of agreed, like, he wouldn't be where he is.
And a fellow betting man.
Right. He's a degenerate. I love him. Actually, that's the next jersey I need. I need an Ivan Toney jersey. But yeah.
Action Network Tony.
I need to do that on like FIFA, just do create a team and get a betting sponsor.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brentford's a lot of fun to watch. They're another side that if you are fighting for a certain spot in the table, you don't want to see them up next on the calendar, because they can surprise anybody at any given time. But I just don't think there's quite enough firepower there to compete with Brighton, Fulham, Newcastle, Tottenham when it's all said and done.
Yeah, so I think we're pretty much in consensus that this 12 through 10 will probably finish Palace 12, Villa 11, and then Brentford 10th.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chelsea?
Yeah, no. I expect both Chelsea and Liverpool to finish above Brentford. Will likely finish above Brighton. I know that's not like super popular take on this podcast, because we both really like Brighton and don't care for the other two. But if we're really being realistic about it, I
think Brighton can stay ahead of Chelsea. I think Fulham drops back a little bit. I think Brighton ends up finishing ahead of Fulham. I think Brighton finishes in the Europa League spot. I think Tottenham finishes in. Shit, actually, I don't know.
That's what the people listen for us to just say, I don't know. But of those three, I don't think any of them really are going to threaten a Europa spot unless some weird Champion Cup winners messes with the table and who qualifies like it does most years. But I don't see any of them finishing fifth. I see Fulham and Brighton being my two favorites out of the three that we're talking about right now to finish in a Conference League spot. I do expect, though, Liverpool and Chelsea both to really push all three of these teams. Likely one of Liverpool or Chelsea will finish ahead of all three, I think, when it's all said and done. I'm not going to sit here and pick who, because I don't know injury reports for those clubs. Maybe I should if I have a podcast talking about soccer. But I do expect one of those to jump all three at some point in time.
All right. Let's talk about the top five. I guess we were supposed to consider Fulham and Brighton in this group, but we're going to talk about the top five. Tottenham in fifth, Newcastle fourth, United in third, City in second, and Arsenal in first. One thing that I just look at this right off the bat, and you guys, one thing you guys have going for you is y'all aren't in any European competitions.
Huge, especially how thin our depth is. We have little to no depth. We could not afford, and we only have one. We're only in one cup. It's not fun losing in the FA Cup in the third round, but we did again. So we have, and our Carabao Cup is against Southampton. So in theory, you should be able to.
Who's on the other side of that again? Who's
Man U, and holy cow.
Isn't like Middlesbrough or something?
It's a Prem team, I'm pretty sure. This is
it
bad.
Really? While you look that up, I mean, Tottenham wants to advance in the Champions League, obviously. United and Arsenal, no matter what they say, they want to win the Europa League. They could say, "Oh, we're focused on the Prem," like it really doesn't matter, but they want to win that competition. Sure.
And I think that's why the Trossard signing is kind of important, because they can do that. You can feel very confident putting Trossard up in almost any Europa League competition and being one of the more impactful players on the field. And then you can sit a Martinelli or you can sit a Saka for a game, or bring him on as a sub if you have to. So I think those are more the moves we're likely to see Arsenal to make. They just made another one for a defender today. I'm blanking on the name right now, but I think those kind of moves will allow Arsenal to compete for a Europa championship while also putting emphasis on the Prem. But I do think the factor of other competitions will certainly come into play. Forest is the other team left in the Carabao, so it is all four teams left. Our Prem teams, 2 European qualifiers right now, 2 bottom half table are the other 2 that they get to face. So I think there is a chance for Newcastle and Man U to try and win those games. Obviously, you're not going to just throw a semifinal match to rest guys, but do so in a responsible way. And not really have a great impact. I think more of the impact moving forward is going to be those teams in European competition. I think that's the one really big advantage Newcastle have, like you said. The other big advantage, I think you guys are actually even with us on this. It's games on the road that you haven't played yet against top half teams. I think we only have 2 or 3 left, and I believe you guys only have 2 or 3 left. I know we haven't gone to City yet, and I know we haven't gone to Chelsea yet. But we've been to Arsenal, we've been to Tottenham, we've been to Man U. We're in a solid spot where a lot of our games against the top half teams are at home. I think you guys are in a somewhat similar situation. I think you just have to travel
at Arsenal, at City, at Chelsea. Don't remember Man U.
I think you guys just have to travel to us and Liverpool, if I'm right, which are 2 damn near impossible places to win games, but you only got 2 of those. And if you can get draws in those, you're sitting pretty. When you look at, I believe one of the sides, I'm trying to look at it now, I believe Liverpool still has 4 tough roads against us, City, and Brighton, I think. So I think that's another thing that will kind of play a factor is rest of the schedule. You kind of alluded to it in our relegation, kind of looking at that when determining where we think teams will finish. I think that's where both of us do kind of have an advantage, but I think we're going to be purely competing with each other, so it's kind of a moot point. I do think the top 3 are decently solidified, in my opinion, with how good Man U's looked, how talented City is, how fantastic Arsenal has looked. I think when you're looking at European competition, it's going to be, Newcastle, Tottenham, maybe a Spurs, or maybe a Liverpool or a Chelsea, and then maybe Fulham or Brighton. But from a schedule perspective, we both are in a pretty comfortable spot with us having the advantage, just not having to play Champions League.
Yeah. I do agree about the top 3. I think is Man City and Erling Haaland injury away from winning the Premier League? because they just, obviously I'm joking, but I mean that's the thing we talked about all year, and I don't want to go too deep into it because we don't know enough about system dynamics and malleability as far as changing player types and such. Obviously, Pep Guardiola, the coach of Manchester City, he's really been the coach at three big stops: Bayern, Barcelona, Man City. Had different styles at every spot. So he was at Barcelona when he had to figure out like that Suarez, Messi, Neymar dynamic, how to do it, the tiki-taka. And then when he was at Bayern, he had the Lewandowski. That was kind of the start of Lewandowski's real come up. The true number 9, the Erling Haaland type of number 9. And his system changed to adapt to that. And everybody thought Pep Guardiola, give him any team full of really good players, he'll play any system he wants, and it's going to work. It really, I mean, it hasn't worked this year to that standard. And when I watch City, I don't really know why. It's almost like the players are just like, we're all so good. A lot of us have been together so long. Let's all go do our own thing now. Get out of City. City bring in their new players. That's honestly what it feels like to me. It's like this big crop of really expensive City players have been there a minute and they've won their Premier League and they've had so much disappointment in the Champions League. It's like there's no passion to play for City anymore. There's no, like, you watch Arsenal and it's like they're committed to the badge, the project, the manager. City is just not. And that might be bold of me to say, but I think that's what I see when I watch City.
It's completely valid. And I think two of the most fun watches for a lot of, not for you, but for a lot of unaffiliated fans has likely been Newcastle and Arsenal, and I think it is because of that. You can just see. I
mean, I can say yes.
You can see and feel the passion. You can see and feel the passion both those sides have for their club and for their fan base and for the community in some aspects. At least in Newcastle, I can't speak to Arsenal as much, but you can see how much it means to them. And City is feeling very much Barcelona-esque. We're like, yes, the fans are very excited, but I've always kind of had some of that thought at different periods of Barcelona's time. Not always, but where it is like this grand stop on your career to say I was a Barcelona player, and you work so hard to get there, and then you get there and it just doesn't come. That passion doesn't come through the same. And obviously there are errors with the Messi, who I think was very through and through Barcelona for so long, or the Ronaldinho, like that, not always at Barcelona, but that club, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, certainly comes to mind in that respect. And I agree. We're starting to kind of feel that from City. You can even look at Liverpool, who's sitting 9th, and they play with more passion. Point. I get more emotion out of watching Liverpool matches than I do City matches, and Liverpool's not even playing well, but like they care. There's frustration there when it's not going well. And I agree. I think City just lethargic might be a little bit strong, but it's just not that same passion you're seeing. And I think to a certain extent, I see that with Spurs too. And, you and I have talked off air about how it's probably time for Kane and Son to move on. And I think now they haven't achieved, not a dig, but they haven't achieved what the City players have had. But I think at some point you just become stale in soccer to an extent. And I think some of those City players might be getting stale. I think some of those Tottenham players might be getting stale. And the more come up teams like Man U, because they have been down for a while, and the Arsenals and the Newcastles, like you feel that passion, whether it be on the touchline, in the bench, in the locker room, out in the city. It's just not quite the same with City or Spurs for me.
I'm going to make a very niche reference to this top 2 in the Premier League. You look at Arsenal and City, and for you Americans, you're going to love this shit. You're going to understand it. Dylan, you might not being up in Michigan, but I think of Arsenal as this Texas high school football, West Texas team that grew up together. They've, been in this small community, the community, bands around them. They're all really good. They're all going to huge D1 colleges. But they get matched up in a national championship game with a team like IMG in Florida that just doesn't give a shit.
One of those prep California schools where kids come all over the country.
All their guys. Yeah. and they end up playing this, whether it's Texas or Georgia or Florida, any of these really big high school football communities, towns that have grown up knowing, okay, this is going to be our team as second graders.
Right.
It's like they already have their quarterback identified. The guy that's going to lead them to the state championship. In IMG, they just recycle. Who's the best player from this state, that state, that state, that state? City doesn't have a leader. They don't have a leader. They don't have a Jordan Henderson. Like, that's what you see at Liverpool. That's the reason Liverpool's glue is still together, I genuinely think, is X factors like Jordan Henderson. Arsenal, they're all young. They're passionate. It might eventually get like that. Arsenal will. They're going to have so many superstars on that roster. One of them's eventually going to have to leave for Madrid.
Saka's coming to Newcastle.
Okay.
His dad was a Newcastle fan.
Y'all are getting Mbappe, so just chill.
Please no. I don't want that. I love him, but I don't want that.
Yeah. No, that's what this really feels like to me, and it's just vibes. It's a difference in vibes is what it comes down to. And I feel pretty passionately about City not having a true leader. Kevin De Bruyne, Gundogan, whatever. Like, I think Gundogan's the captain. Gundogan. I don't know how to say his name.
Gundogan.
But De Bruyne is just like this dad who's really good at soccer. He's not like a leader. Mm-hmm. They don't have a
Trippier. They don't have a Xhaka. Like, they just don't have that like commanding presence. No, I completely agree, and I think as we touched on this somewhat at the beginning, but we're kind of seeing this changing of European football landscape, and so much money is in the English game. I think that there will be projects that do turn out like City at some point, and multiple ones, and it could be Newcastle, because
you mean Arsenal or City?
No, City. Like, it could.
City wasn't really a project though. It was like
an experience or a club that the money goes too far. Like, I think so much of what City did for so long worked so well. I think it was because of Pep. It was because of signings. But at some point, you get spend happy. And I'm not saying Haaland was a bad signing. I still think he was a fantastic signing for them. But so not him specifically. But like, you kind of forget that you're piecing together a team and not just a collection of phenomenal players. Yeah. And that's something that Arsenal's done well. That's something I've applauded Liverpool countless times, as much as it pains me for doing well. Newcastle's done it well. Brighton seems to do it on a different scale, but seems to do it. But then you have the Chelseas, who's just throwing money and seeing what sticks. And I think that hurts the locker room, that hurts a fan base, it hurts an atmosphere. City, I don't think quite does it to Chelsea's level, but I do think that, as we've said, is kind of part of their issue too. So it will be interesting to see as more money goes into the English side of the game. If that is an issue other teams have, I think that's one thing people crap on Newcastle all the time about the money we spent, but I think it's been so wisely spent and around a certain type of player and a certain team vibe check, if you will, that I've enjoyed it and appreciated. Where City, it's just, let's buy the most talented team in the world, and I think you could argue they do have the most talented team.
They've done good business.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But it just, you're right, it just feels stale.
Yeah.
And Tottenham's right there in the middle, just a really good example of what it's like to have just held on a little bit too long. Like we mentioned earlier, the 16, 17, 18, 19, up to probably 2020 was the opportunity. And once that is gone, it just feels like we're grasping it at straws at this point. So the last team I want to touch on really quick, as we sit in the 49th minute, is Man U. And Eric Ten Hag, man, I want to go back and find my tweet. It was like sometime maybe last winter. I don't remember when they hired him exactly, but I was so scared about Ten Hag to United.
We both were. Like, I'm pretty sure we said it on air. It was like, this just feel like there are some players when you're looking at signings, you're like, that guy's never going to sign there. It just feels off. Or that guy is a Arsenal guy. Like, Trossard just feels like an Arsenal guy to me more than Mudryk. Mudryk never really felt Arsenal to me, but Ten Hag just felt Man United. It just felt like it was going to work.
Hold on. I know what you're saying. I'm gonna go the opposite way though and give you another niche reference. Erik ten Hag to Man United is that girl that finally tamed that player, that douchebag guy that is Man United. Erik ten Hag is the one that finally whipped that club into shape.
Almost makes him likable. Almost. I don't like him.
Almost.
I don't like him, but I don't hate him. I hate Bruno Fernandes.
He is the personality. He's the person. He's the general that franchise and their whatever the hell adjectives you want to use to describe it that they are. He's what they needed. And in that way, he's perfect for Man United.
Yeah.
Not you were.
Yeah, not that he was all encompassing.
Like Conte and Man United are like this, like the same.
Yeah, right.
They wouldn't mesh.
Right. Not that he felt like everything I've known Man United most of my life, but it just felt like, as you said, this is going to be the calming presence. This is going to be that coach for that high school basketball player that super talented but is a D-bag and just jacks up threes. This is going to be that coach to whip them into shape and make them a serious team, or make him a serious player. This is a serious team. So like the job he's done is terrifying. I will never actually like United, but I'm finding it harder to hate them because of the job he's done. I think Eriksen's also part of that. We both have a huge soft spot for Eriksen, so it's just hard to fully hate.
Quietly having a great year.
Really hard to fully hate any team that Eriksen's on, I think, for either of us. So maybe that's part of it as well. But I think the Weghorst signing, I think, was a brilliant piece of business for them. He fits exactly what they need. Rashford's been a joy to watch since the World Cup. I think he's scored the most goals since the World Cup in all of Europe for any individual player. So they have been a true joy to watch. I hate saying that, but I would much rather watch United than Spurs,
Tottenham.
City. Maybe that's it about these teams at the top. But
I'd rather watch anything but Tottenham Hotspur Football Club right now. All right, guys. Well,
before Reed has to start ripping shots.
That has been this episode of the Playing Soccer Podcast. First half of the Premier League
done and dusted.
It seems like just yesterday we were talking about how far away the knockout rounds for the Champions League are. Seems to be right around the corner. It's about a month away, so that's going to be here before we know it. Second half, who knows how wild it's going to be. Might be wild, might be very tame. Who knows? Injuries. Hopefully we get some manager fights here and there. And maybe a Conte sacking. So we appreciate you guys listening as always. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share, comment, and all of the rest. We'll talk to y'all next time. Peace out.